Hello you guys and welcome to my channel. I am so excited to have you here. So in today's video, I do want to give a trigger warning before we get started. This video can be triggering to specific individuals. So this type of video, depending on the title of the video or the thumbnail, I would recommend, if that is going to be triggering for you, to watch the next video. But today we are going to be talking about Ruby Franke and her recent plea deal she took on Monday. As we know, based on my last deep dive I did on her, I did a deep dive when she originally got arrested, if you guys want to go back and watch that, because I talk a lot about the things she did on her YouTube channel, and I really went in depth about her, which this video won't be going in depth about her. Rather, it will be talking about her plea deal, her going to prison, and more details about that. But as we know, Ruby Franke and her co-defendant Jody Hildebrandt were arrested on August 30th of 2023 and charged with 6 counts of aggravated child abuse. So both of these women were denied bail due to the severity of the children's injuries. So I do want you guys to keep that in mind, that since August, these 2 women have been in jail. So throughout this video, I may say the term CA, or I may blur certain words as I'm speaking, and I'm doing that so that YouTube does not, one, demonetize this video or take this video down or limit its reach due to specific words that may be said in the video. So if you do hear me blur a word out or anything like that, that is going to be why. So on December 18th of 2023, which is this most recent Monday, Ruby went before the judge with her lawyer and entered a guilty plea to 4 counts of aggravated, and she admitted to the facts of the case. So she admitted the facts of what happened, and she admitted to them, which I will go further into in a minute. So let's watch the clip where she admits guilt and enters her guilty plea.
Ms. Franke is now here. All right, I've been handed a plea agreement, and it appears to be signed by Ms. Franke. Ms. Franke, did you sign this agreement?
Yes,
And you did that today? When did you sign it?
on the 18th,
Okay. You've read it carefully?
every word.
Your signature represents to the court that you've read it carefully, that you understand what you've read, and that you agree to all of the terms. Is that all accurate?
Yes,
You've had sufficient time to ask questions of your counsel, to go over any questions you have. You're ready to go forward.
yes,
You don't need any more time.
I'm ready.
Ms. Franke, is anyone pressuring you to enter into this agreement?
No,
Anyone promising you anything I haven't been told about?
no,
Anything that's not in the written plea agreement?
no,
Are you under the influence of alcohol or drugs today?
no,
Is there anything today that could in any way interfere with your ability to understand the agreement, its consequences, anything?
no,
No physical condition, no medication, nothing?
no.
Mr. Windward, we ready to proceed?
We are ready to proceed.
All right then. Ms. Franke, how do you plead to count 1, aggravated, a second-degree felony?
Guilty.
To count 3, aggravated, a second-degree felony?
Guilty.
To count 5, aggravated, a second-degree felony?
Guilty.
And to count 6, aggravated, a second-degree felony?
With my deepest regret and sorrow for my family and my children, guilty.
There won't be any argument about whether prison is the appropriate sentence, and there's an agreement about the 4 counts running consecutive.
That is correct.
All right, the court finds then that Ms. Franke's pleas are made knowingly and voluntarily. The court therefore accepts and enters those pleas.
Okay, so as we see, all 4 counts are second-degree felonies that show that the defendant intentionally and knowingly inflicted harm upon the child, specifically her 12 and 10-year-old child. The court did dismiss 2 of the counts, which I believe was count 2 and count 4. Both of those counts focused on malnutrition or starvation. So they did agree with, Ruby's lawyers and the courts that they would take those 2 counts off the table, which they did in the plea agreement. So she did end up pleading guilty to 4 of the 6 counts. I will also link down the document below that shows all of the counts with an explanation of each for those of you guys who want to read it. But I do want to point out that Ruby not only pled guilty to the 4 counts, but she pled guilty to the factual basis of the 4 counts. She pled guilty to the details within the counts, so that the plea deal goes very in depth on each count and shows actual details of what happened to her children, explaining the exact details. So I do want to read specifically some of the things that did happen to them so that you guys know of them. But again, I will bleep out specific words. So let's go and read some of the things that did happen to her children that Ruby did completely admit to. Number 1, for count 1, it says that RF was forced to do physical tasks for hours and days at a time. These included wall sits, carrying boxes full of books up and down stairs, and working outside. Eventually, RF was forced to do outside labor without shoes and in the summer heat. He was forced to stand in the direct sunlight for several days. He was forced to remain outside at all hours of the day and night for extended periods of time. RF was denied adequate water for several days. He was required to remain in the summer heat and was punished when he secretly consumed water. He was denied sufficient food, and when given food, he was given very plain meals like rice and chicken, while others in the house ate regular and more flavorful foods. And he was also isolated from other people and denied all forms of entertainment, including books, notebooks, and electronics. Count 2 describes the actions above caused severe emotional harm to RF due to the fact that they began in May and escalated around or throughout the summer months. Additionally, the defendant and another adult regularly sought to indoctrinate RF and convince him that he was evil and possessed, and that he needed to willingly be obedient to avoid punishments, and that the punishments were necessary to repent. He was also told that everything that was being done to him were acts of love. Count 3 talks about the emotional harm that happened to the other child. So they talk about the severe emotional harm that happened to EF, that this individual was also forced to do physical tasks, remain outside, was also denied food and water. They were also repeatedly told that she was evil and possessed. They were told that their punishments were necessary for her to be obedient and repent, and were done in order to help her. And EF was also convinced that she was evil and needed to go through these things in order to repent. So the things that happened to RF and EF were very similar, with the physical tasks, remaining outside, denying food and water, telling them that the things that they were going through were because they had to repent and everything that was happening was out of love. And then count 4 talked about the physical injuries to EF, being that she was forced to work outside barefoot in the heat, was forced to run barefoot on dirt roads for extended periods of time. The feet were repeatedly injured and sunburned. So like I said, if you guys want to go read that, there's a lot more detail that goes into it that I'm not going to talk about. It's very triggering for specific individuals, but if you guys want to go look at those specific counts and read the specific details that go into it, you can. That's just a highlight of what happened to these individuals and what Ruby and Jody did to them. So it was also stated that the sentencing would be held consecutively and that she would get anywhere from 1 to 15 years for each count. So what specifically that she did could range from 1 to 15 years. And based on the plea deal, they did not come up with like, oh, this deal, which happens a lot in a lot of plea deals. There will actually be an agreement with the prosecution and the lawyers for the individual. They will come together and they will come up with a set amount of years or whatever, and they will agree to that. That did not happen in this case. Instead, it will be up to the judge to sentence Ruby for what he believes is the appropriate sentence for what she pled guilty for. So he's going to be able to sentence her on all 4 of those counts. And then based on all 4 of those counts, she will have to be punished consecutively for them. Just in case you guys want me to explain that a little bit further, when someone is sentenced consecutively, that means they have to do one sentencing at a time. So if she's sentenced to specifically, I don't know, what's an easy example? 5 years per sentencing, that's 5, 10, 15, 20. It gets added up and then that's her sentencing. Versus if she was sentenced to a concurrent sentencing, all of that would be together and would occur at the same time. So she would serve her sentencing all at once. So that did not happen. And the plea deal does state that it would be held consecutively and that it is up to the judge. So we will know on February 20th of 2024 what her sentencing is, and it's all based on what the judge believes is the appropriate sentence for her. But each count shows that it can go anywhere from 1 to 15 years. Now, something I did want to talk about was the fact that Ruby Franke's lawyer came out with a statement earlier in the week. So she went to court December 18th with the guilty plea. On December 15th, her lawyer came out with a statement on Ruby Franke's behalf. And I feel like it's really important to talk about because while we've seen she sat there and she made a guilty plea and she said, hey, this is what I did and I admit to it and I'm saying that I'm at fault for this and I did this to my children. This is the statement that was put out by her lawyers just a couple days prior, which clearly she already had this plea deal in place. And then this statement came out, which I thought was interesting. And I wanted to talk about it in this video. It states that the Windward Law is making a statement on behalf of Ruby Franke regarding the pending charges in the Washington County 5th District Court, along with her thoughts about her current family situation. They stated, the lawyer, our client is working with the prosecutor's office and anticipates resolving this matter quickly by entering a plea agreement with the court on Monday, December 18th. Ruby Franke is a devoted mother and also a woman committed to constant improvement. Initially, Ms. Franke believed that Jody Hildebrandt had the insight to offer a path to continual improvement. Ms. Hildebrandt took advantage of this quest and twisted it into something heinous. Over an extended period, Ms. Hildebrandt systematically isolated Ruby Franke from her extended family, older children, and her husband, Kevin Franke. This prolonged isolation resulted in Ms. Franke being subjected to a distorted sense of morality shaped by Ms. Hildebrandt's influence. During Ruby Franke's incarceration in Washington County's jail over the past few months, she has actively engaged in an introspection that has allowed her to reset her moral compass and understand the full weight of her actions. Ms. Franke is committed to taking responsibility for the part she played in the events leading up to her incarceration. Demonstrating a sincere dedication to personal growth and rehabilitation, she has actively begun the process by reaching out to members of her family. Through heartfelt apologies, she seeks to mend relationships and contribute positively to the healing journey of her family. Ruby is aware that Kevin Franke has filed for divorce. While she is devastated by this news, she acknowledges and understands his anger and reasoning. Despite the pain, she respects his decisions and remains hopeful that with time, she can contribute to rebuilding trust and fostering understanding within their family. Ruby has offered her full cooperation to help the children reunite with their father. Windward Law recognizes the profound love that Ms. Franke holds for her children, and we are genuinely saddened that she found herself on this challenging path under the influence of Miss Hildebrandt. It is our firm belief that Miss Franke is a devoted mother who unfortunately was led astray. She is sincere in her commitment to securing the best possible future for her family, and we remain hopeful that with the right support and understanding, she can navigate a path of healing and growth. Now, what are your thoughts on that statement? Because in my opinion, this statement is technically saying, hey, I was brainwashed by this other individual, and that's what caused me to essentially my children. But I'm sorry, I don't believe it. I do not believe that things that Ruby Franke has done to her children was only because she was led astray by Jody Hildebrandt. We have already seen the online YouTube video. She was a family vlogger. We already seen way before she was very close with Jody Hildebrandt, and we could see their online interactions years before that. She was already posting videos doing very questionable things to her children, and that was things that we only seen on the internet. We don't know what was happening behind closed doors for those years. We only hear what we now know the oldest daughter has talked about. But again, mentally, physically, emotionally, we already seen what these children went through just on the YouTube channel of the videos that she decided to post. What was going on behind the scenes when she wasn't cool or friends with or close with Jody Hildebrandt? But I think rather than taking 100% accountability, it looks like, oh, these lawyers wanted to craft a PR statement that puts full blame onto Jody Hildebrandt in order for Jody to take 90% of the fall and have Ruby look like she was just a mother who was led astray by a professional mental health counselor or therapist. Now, clearly, Ruby Franke did put in a guilty plea, right? But for her lawyers to put out that statement, clearly they talked to their client about that before they put the statement out. Clearly they must have agreed for that statement to go out. So it kind of like is conflicting to me, because on one end she's pleading guilty, but then on the other end this statement is coming out, which is being like, hey, we're going to put all of the blame onto this other individual as much as we possibly can. So it's kind of weird to me. Now, don't get it twisted. Jodi Hildebrandt, 100,000%, in my opinion, does have blame in this specific situation. She's not blame free, but they both should be taking accountability and blame for this situation, rather than Ruby saying it's all Jodi's fault and that she was just led astray. Because again, we've seen those videos, we've seen the type of things that Ruby was already doing to her children on her social media platform before Jodi was ever in the picture. Now, I do want to mention that Jodi Hildebrandt was a mental health professional. She was licensed as a therapist, I believe. And to see the things that she has done is 100% one of the most disgusting things I have seen. Clearly, Jodi Hildebrandt also deserves her time in court. She deserves to also lose all of her licensing that she currently has. She should never be allowed to counsel individuals after that in a professional setting with a licensing to back her up. Because again, the type of advice that she gives is horrific and is why she's in prison right now. So now we are going to be waiting to see what Jodi Hildebrandt does, to see if she also pleads guilty, which I'm assuming she may plead guilty, because in Ruby's plea deal, she actually agrees to testify against Jodi if need be. So if Jodi Hildebrandt decides to go to court and decides to go through a trial or anything like that, Ruby in her plea deal has agreed to testify against Jodi. So that's not looking very good for her, especially with this statement that's being put out. So it's looking like Jodi may also end up pleading guilty and stuff like that, but we can only wait to see, and definitely waiting to see what Ruby's sentencing is in February of 2024. Now, to conclude this video, I do want to mention that I am glad to see that the children will not have to go through a trial where they're going to have to stand and testify against their mother, because I do think that that can be traumatizing for anybody, but let alone a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. So it is good and important that the children aren't going to have to do that. And I'm definitely hoping that they get the best care moving forward and are able to take the steps they need towards a long process of healing, which it is going to be a very long process for these children moving forward. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Again, I think it's disgusting, this situation. I think it's also wild just to look back on Ruby Franke's YouTube videos, the videos that we do have, footage that we do have, and just looking back on those videos and seeing the things that she's done. I can definitely see how this snowballed into what it is today, because the things that she did years ago also weren't okay. And I definitely see why over the past couple years, people have been raising awareness on this family and on 8 Passengers in the vlog channel, because again, 4 years before Jodi even came up in conversation, there were a lot of issues with this vlog channel, what Ruby Franke was doing to her children and what was happening in the family. With that being said, don't forget to leave a like and a comment and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I will see you guys in the next one.